Hello there ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX14 Walsh and welcome to an all new World of Warships gameplay. In this episode I'll be sailing out in the Tier VII German Cruiser, known as the Yorck, in a Tier VII Domination match on the map Estuary. Continuing my exploration of the roles the destroyer ship class can fulfill within World of Warships. In this installment I shall be focusing on how a destroyer and cruiser can work together to delay the enemy's push into an objective. To elaborate, sailing alongside my friend Z, who is in the Tier VII Japanese Torpedo-Boat Destroyer, known as the Akatsuki, we intend to quickly capture an objective, and once secured, we then aim to delay the enemy's retake of the objective for as long as possible. As I analyse the gameplay, I would like to draw your attention to two main areas for discussion. Number 1. Vision provision. Z, with his destroyer's concealment, shall be aiming to spot the enemy fleet so that I can shoot from the cover of islands rather than open water. And number 2. Torpedo threat. Z shall be continuously using his destroyer's torpedoes to discourage the enemy from pushing into the objective. With the forward covered, let us get into the gameplay. Loading into the match and looking at the team sheets, the one minor thing that comes to my mind is the fact that Z is sailing in the fastest destroyer in this match. With our Alcasta, the enemy T-22 and the Jervis all being slower, the main opponent for Z being the Jervis coming at a top speed of 36 knots. And I'm spawned in on the western side of the map. This means that Z is going to be the first ship to get to Objective Alpha, which is the objective we're going to go for. Now as we wait for the game to start and make our way towards Objective Alpha, allow me to explain why I'm showing this game from my perspective and not Z's. I would argue that in this instance we are going to see how a destroyer is benefiting another ship class, in terms of the existence and presence of the destroyer using its strengths to its advantage and that of its team is going to benefit our own cruiser, and it means that we can apply our strength of damage per minute from our 4 twin 210mm batteries, and also mitigate one of our weaknesses, which is the weaker concealment compared to the destroyer class, hiding ourselves from the enemy team through the application of cover rather than fighting from open water. Now Z is going to be charging in and we're going to be supporting him in mitigating one of his weaknesses, which is a lack of gunpowder compared to our own ship. And particularly if he bumps into the enemy Jervis, which I would argue is the superior cap contester, with that British destroyer having 3 twin guns, much like Z's own ship, but the difference is the Jervis fires faster and has the more aggressive firing angles, with the guns all being able to point relatively forward, compared to Z having to angle his ship such that he has to expose a lot of broadside in order to bring about the rearmost guns, of which 2 of the turrets are located towards the aft of the ship. Now charging in, I'm coming in close behind, and the idea behind this is I want to provide as much support to Z in the early stage of the cap contest. I'm angling away a little bit now, but look how close I am, 2.5 kilometers at this point. And by the time Z gets into the objective, roughly 4 kilometers, if an enemy ship's 6 kilometers north of him, an enemy destroyer at 10 kilometers is something I can hit reliably. Now he's also got the support of our De Grasse and our Fiji coming up behind as well. And this emphasises a point I made in the previous instalment around the concept of the fact that whilst the initial contest of objective is between the 2 destroyers that contest it, over time additional ships start to fire from long range outside the objective, and they can make the difference in terms of the support each destroyer receives and therefore how much damage is dealt to each destroyer. And in this instance, we can see that Z has the support of 3 cruisers who can directly fire onto the T-22, as they've overextended by the looks of things from the rest of their fleet, only having the support at long range from the Dallas and perhaps some other ships further back, such as their Shores if it's gone down this way. And this means that the T-22 is going to lose its health dramatically compared to Z's own health state staying up, because he's anticipated he's going to be shot at by enemy ships that are sitting behind the objective, so north of the objective supporting the T-22. Because the T-22 is out in the open, it's now crippled, it's going to go down. And the net result of this is that Z can now come about to take Objective Alpha, and in return the enemy team have not dealt too much damage. I've taken a little bit of damage, a fire's been set, Z's lost a little bit of health, but that T-22 has been dispelled from the game, and now they do not have the ability to confer the vision to their team. Instead it becomes a case of, okay, there's no destroyer on the enemy team over this side of the map. Now Z comes around, let's have a look at what's going on elsewhere. Looking over towards the east, we can see that the enemy team has made a major push towards Objective Delta. They're sending a large force, our team's also sending a large force in response, but the enemy team have got there first and their Jervis has taken the objective and is going to contest our friendly Acasta, the Tier 5 British destroyer. Now we should expect that the Jervis is going to win that 1 versus 1, all things considered and neutral. And as a result of that, we could expect that the enemy team will start to gain the lead. Because if we look at the point scores at the moment, whilst our team does have the points advantage, when our caster falls, the points advantage will be neutralised simply because both teams will have lost a destroyer. but then it will turn into the favour of the enemy team because they've had objective Delta and therefore the 2 points, compared to our team only having one objective, Objective Charlie. They've had 2 objectives for longer. And we will get Alpha, but the ability to build up points has been slower on our team compared to the enemy team. So they will just take a small lead, and it's been applied right now. It's a lead of 20 points, and it will expand over time simply because of the 2-to-1 ratio at the moment, and it will steady out in the region of 30 to 35 points shortly. Now, what does this mean in terms of playstyle? Well, looking at the minimap, we could argue that the enemy team over on the east at the moment are fragmented. They've made an aggressive push into Objective Delta, but they haven't consolidated their force, whereas our team are more consolidated and taking their time. This means that our team could make quite a powerful push back into Objective Delta. Now, flipping things over on our side of the map to the western side, we can see how our team are quite sporadic around the southern hemisphere of Objective Alpha, albeit we've got 2 cruisers sailing at the western side of the objective, whereas the enemy team playing quite passively north of Objective Alpha. They're playing in a defensive manner still, or one where they're just trying to get some damage out, but there's no overall aggression. So we just need to take our time at Objective Alpha because we have done our job in taking the objective, and in return, if the enemy team want to push, that's where we're going to be our most powerful because we'll know what's coming because we have the destroyer providing us with the vision. And you'll see at this point I'm pretty much sitting around waiting for an opportunity to hit something hard and punish it. In this case it's the enemy shores, who is spotted by our friendly Fiji, who's gone all the way down the western side of the map, so he's not providing this vision at this point. We're still capitalising on the vision provided to us, and the shores is coming to a standstill and starting to go into reverse, and our second salvo is going to do a lot more than the miss of the first salvo. We perhaps could have aimed a little bit further back on the ship to maximise the damage, but still, this salvo is going to hurt. Now Z's repositioned himself at this point to go over towards our 2 cruisers on the western border because he knows he can provide stronger vision out on that side. Now the difficulty with this is the fact that what our team is effectively doing down the western side of the map right now is we are pushing into an enemy team that is playing defensively. We are pushing into 2 battleships and 3 cruisers, with 2 cruisers and arguably a destroyer, but remember the destroyer has the concealment advantage, so they're not necessarily being seen to push. And our battleship that came down here, the Koenig, is now making their way eastward to support our team over on that side of the map. Look at the minimap once again and you can see the mirror situations happening with regards to the eastern side, in that the enemy team seems to be pushing into a huge mass of ships on our team that are congregated to the south of Objective Delta, and it becomes a case of which side's push falls apart first. Is it going to be the enemy team, which have arguably the greater amount of ships to lose down that eastern side because they've got the larger force base there, or is it going to be our team over on the west here? We've already lost our Fiji, we've only got the Degrassi who's pushed up now and going to the smokescreen that the Z is deploying. So we're going to see how this plays out, and it looks as though the points lead has swung back in our favour simply because of the number of enemy ships that have been sunk on the eastern side. In return, what am I doing? Well, I'm not really doing much right now because there's no need for me to push, and remember, just because the enemy team may be retreating, it may not always be the best case of action to push in, and you're seeing that reflected in 2 cases here. One directly in terms of the action that's going on, and then looking at the minimap you're seeing the other example. And it's quite funny how it's playing out in parallel. Both teams are making what I'd argue is the same mistake. Nonetheless, by Z deploying the smokescreen for the Degrassi, he improves its survivability to an extent, and now he's pulling back into the centre of Objective Alpha. We've been agreeing this over TeamSpeak that it's going to be the best application of its destroyer, because if he continues to push further and further forward, he exposes himself to the risk of being cut off behind enemy lines, because he only needs to sail beyond, say, the shores, who could come up and cut him off via an eastern flank, and he pushes up towards the Dows that's north of him, and then he's pinched between 2 cruisers and gets absolutely shredded with no hope of getting out, and even if he's got his smokescreen, he can only use his smoke to hide his ship, not to escape with it. So instead, by him coming back to Objective Alpha, he can play in the centre of this objective and dominate the vision control of the western side of the map. And our team now is starting to push into Objective Delta and starting to take it back. Albeit they're going to take their time on this, so we just need to buy our team time by holding up this side of the map. And eventually they will take Objective Delta, it's just going to be quite some time before they do. Now the Indianapolis here has extended far forward from the rest of their team, looking at the minimap, and what we can try to think about is punishing them. Now to do so, Z's concerned about the fact that the Indianapolis has its radar and can use that to essentially smoke Z out and start to drop a lot of damage on. So what I'm doing is I'm gradually making my way out from behind cover because I'm anticipating that Indianapolis is going to push far forward in order to try and get a positional advantage on Z and start to lay into him. But instead, I'm going to hit the broadside of the Indianapolis and show some broadside to my opponent, who actually catches me by surprise here in the fact that their radar extends out to 9.9 kilometers, something I did not anticipate. Now fortunately I've set myself up to reverse and start angling against the incoming armour piercing from their 8-inch guns, meaning that their guns fall a little bit short and only clip the front of the ship, not doing any citadel damage, whereas we hit their citadel and dealt some considerable damage. And the Indianapolis, as they made their turn, has actually beached, and they beached right into the path of Z's torpedoes. Now one thing we haven't been talking about is what is Z doing other than providing vision and providing a smoke screen for our digress. What he has been doing as well is continuously throwing down his sets of torpedoes, 3 triple sets with an approximate reload of let's say 72 seconds. The idea behind this is that because of his class's national strength, he's playing a Japanese Torpedo-Boat Destroyer, so it has the long range torpedoes that can deal considerable damage, and he has quite a good reload on them, he has the ability to throw down this constant hidden threat of these torpedoes that are just going to suddenly appear in the water. Now if you're sailing a ship such as the Dallas, you do have the hydroacoustic search consumable. Cruiser classes typically have the hydroacoustic search consumable, and that means they can avoid the threat of torpedoes by seeing them from far away. But remember, these consumables only last for a certain period of time, and once they've run out, they're on a recharge. It means that you are sailing into this void of water where a torpedo could appear directly in front of you. And that puts you off to some extent, because note how the enemy team, despite the fact that only going up against 2 ships down this side of the map, are still not choosing to push. And you could argue that's because of the hidden threat, firstly, of Z's destroyer and the fact it could be anywhere right now. It's most likely based on the directionality of the torpedoes when they're spotted in Objective Alpha, where Z is right now. But the difficulty is they don't know where the destroyer is going to pop up next, they only know it's spotting them. Then on top of that you have those torpedoes that are coming in, that's the second part of the hidden threat, and then finally my own ship, which when I decide to deploy it from behind cover can really frustrate the enemy team in the fact I can continuously deploy shells and damage per minute onto targets without fear of return fire because I can play from cover. I'm choosing not to here because I had the thought that the shores was going to push rather aggressively forward and I want to try and get them out of the game when they expose broadside. Unfortunately our salvo came in a little too high there, but we've done some damage to them. Z's also going to get in some nice high explosive damage there and put the shores on critical health. And while Z is trading a lot of health in return because the enemy Dallas throws in a nice salvo against him, it means that Shores now is really going to have to play off of the back line and merely act in a support role at long range, using one of its national strengths to its advantage, that is the gun range on its 152mm batteries. But at this point, Z's aware of the threat of the Dallas pushing in, and you'll see that I'm rotating to counter that threat. And because again I'm covered by the land masses, what it means is I can rotate my ship around without being detected, because my concealment by sea is 12.6 kilometers, and it's not too strong in that the enemy ships can push far forward. We've already seen the Shores outspot me, they've got the stronger concealment, and the Dallas would be the same. So instead I'm using Z to give me the vision, give me the intelligence of where I need to position myself next. I'm using the land masses to conceal my approach. So it's not just the damage per minute, but also get myself in the right position in the first place to deploy that damage per minute, and the very powerful armor piercing shells we have with that alpha strike of 5600. Now looking over to the east once again, because it's been another 3 minutes, we can see that our team has finally taken Objective Delta and they're pushing through gradually from the east to the west in order to seal off the game. But we still need to buy our team time, and now the enemy push is coming. They finally realise there's only 2 ships and you really need to push now if you want to give your team any chance of winning. Simply because we've got 3 objectives to their 1. They've run out of time. They have wasted a lot of time in getting this push together, I would say. The Dallas has come charging in. Z is going to go toe to toe with it simply to provide the vision. He's thrown his torpedoes down, and in return, as Dallas goes broadside, I'm going to try and rip it out of the high seas. The first salvo, however, comes in just a little bit too high. 4 over penetration is not what we wanted. What about the second salvo? Well, unfortunately, the second salvo didn't account for the fact that Dallas was going to slow down slightly angled because they're reacting to Z's incoming torpedoes. But the third salvo will work. And we get revenge for Z being sunk by the Dallas. But Z did his job, which is he constantly provided vision to us to let us know what was coming. We're able to get some damaging salvos off, particularly against the enemy shores, to an extent against the Indianapolis, and get the Dallas out of the game. And now because we're going up against enemy ships that have effectively a weaker concealment compared to the Dallas, what it means is, even though we're going to be spotted by the shores quite early, as they push in, they're going to be pushing well into our concealment circle, and in return we're going to be able to see the enemy ships, and we can have this gunfight long distance, and now I can start to use my class's other strength, which is kiting. We're able to get rid of the ships for a joint effort that could outspot my own cruiser quite significantly. Instead, now I just deploy myself in a kiting role, giving my teammates time to come around and support Objective Alpha and take Objective Bravo. I do not need to be aggressive, I can just take my time, get away and prove evasive. In doing so, I'm now going to target the shores, try and get a couple of penetrations at distance, see how the armor piercing shells play out because I've only recently got the Yorck. The idea being here to reset their capture progress. I'm not concerned about taking them out of the game. If I can do so, great. But again, it's just buying time for my team, who are now targeting the shores, and that ship's about to go down to wrap the game up. Time for the post-game stats. With the victory secured, we can see that our battle performance amounted to a total damage output of 65,602 HP. Moving on to the team scores, we can see that we placed first in our team in terms of base experience earned with 1,547, whereas Z placed fifth with 1,228. Our role over the course of this game was to support Z and his destroyer in both the initial capture and subsequent defence of Objective Alpha. Capturing Alpha was a quick process, while our team swiftly dispatching the enemy's T-22, the Tier V German Destroyer, as they appeared to overextend into the objective, picking a fight with Z with little support from their allies. Meanwhile, in Z's case, he had the support of both my cruiser and our team's Fiji, the Tier VII British cruiser, and De Grasse, the Tier VI Premium French cruiser. This serves to emphasise one of the points I raised in my previous video, link available in the top right corner of your screen as displayed now, whereby the contest and objective does not just come down to which destroyers are involved, but also which ships are supporting them. The rest of the game then saw us position our cruiser behind the island south of Alpha, using the vision provided by Z to hit the enemy fleet whenever they started to get close to the objective. In conjunction, Z continued to deploy his torpedoes to make things even more difficult for the enemy fleet, and whilst he only scored one torpedo hit out of 72 torpedoes, this coming on the beached Indianapolis, the Tier VII Premium American cruiser, this continuous threat of torpedoes were definitely played on the minds of the enemy captains. The net result is that the enemy fleet had to consider pushing into two hidden threats, a destroyer using their concealment to both unleash torpedoes and provide vision for a cruiser that was in cover and able to rain down salvo after salvo on any ship that got too close to Alpha. Although the enemy fleet did push in the end and started to gain ground, this came far too late as the rest of our team had finally secured Delta and started to attack the enemy fleet from the east, bringing the game to a close. As for our detailed report, we have no key items to note today and shall move on. Finally coming on to credits and experience earned, we can see that after additions and deductions, we took away 102,059 silver credits and 4,876 commander experience. In conclusion, I believe today's gameplay has shown how a destroyer and cruiser can harmonise well, particularly in defending an objective. By using the class strength of a fellow destroyer's concealment, i.e. that of Z's, to provide vision of the enemy fleet for our own cruiser, we could mitigate our class's weaker concealment by choosing to fire from positions of cover, preventing the enemy fleet from spotting our own ship. This allowed us to deploy our class's strength of damage per minute to continuously deal damage to enemy ships who travelled too close to Objective Alpha. If this was not discouraging enough for the enemy fleet as they considered retaking Alpha, Z also applied his destroyer's natural strength of long-range hard-hitting torpedoes by firing them at the enemy fleet whenever they attempted to push into the objective. Whilst he scored only one hit, this certainly would have made the concept of pushing the objective even less appetising for the enemy fleet. Although the enemy fleet did eventually push, in the end it was too late as the rest of our team started to attack from the eastern flank. I would argue the fact it took so long for the enemy fleet to consider pushing can be attributed to the holding action conducted by a destroyer-cruiser partnership. With that, I've been TX141. If you enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future World of Warships videos on my channel. Additionally, if you do not currently play World of Warships but are thinking of now giving this highly enjoyable game a try, you can sign up today using the link in the video description. Alas, that is all I've got time for today, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, as always, I bid you fair winds and following seas.